This is a quiet, emotional story about a woman who learned how to survive by staying invisible, by following routines, by avoiding questions, by keeping the past sealed away. But some wounds don't disappear just because you stop touching them. They wait, and one ordinary moment begins to pull everything back into the light. If you enjoy slow, realistic, emotionally grounded stories like this, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and support the work. It truly helps keep these stories coming. Emily Carter believed silence was safer than honesty. She didn't always know why she believed that. She just knew it had worked for a long time. Silence kept things from getting messy. Silence kept people from asking questions she didn't want to answer. Silence let her move through life without being noticed and without being hurt. At least, that's what she told herself. Every morning started the same way. The alarm went off at 5:12 a.m., not 5:15, not 5, 5:12. Emily never remembered when she chose that number. She only knew that changing it felt wrong, like touching something fragile that might crack if she wasn't careful. She reached out, turned it off, and lay still for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling of her apartment. The ceiling had a thin crack running across it, faint but visible when the light hit it just right. She'd noticed it on the first day she moved in. 7 years later, it was still there. Some things didn't get fixed. They just stayed. She sat up slowly, feet touching the cold floor, and listened. No voices. No footsteps. No one breathing beside her. Good. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a narrow kitchen that felt more like a hallway. It smelled faintly of coffee grounds and clean laundry. Familiar. Controlled. Emily liked controlled. She showered, dressed, tied her hair back without looking in the mirror for too long. She avoided her own eyes when she could. They remembered too much. By 6 a.m., she was out the door. The city was still half asleep, wrapped in that quiet gray that only existed in early morning. Streetlights flickered. A few cars passed. Somewhere a siren wailed and then faded away. Emily walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, hands tucked into her coat pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, not from cold, but from habit. She didn't like taking up space. The bus arrived right on time, Route 17. Same driver as always. She didn't know his name. She didn't want to. Knowing names made things complicated. She tapped her card, murmured a quiet thank you, and took her usual seat, middle of the bus, window side, a place where she could see out without being seen too much. As the bus pulled away, she rested her forehead lightly against the glass. The city moved past her in pieces. Closed shops, a bakery opening its doors, an elementary school with a faded mural painted by kids who were probably adults now. Emily watched it all without really seeing it. Her mind was somewhere else. It always was during the ride. She thought about the meeting she had later that morning, about the files she still hadn't finished reviewing, about the voicemail she deleted without listening to last night. She told herself she'd listen to it later. She always told herself that. When the bus stopped near the medical complex, Emily stood and moved toward the door. Just before stepping off, she hesitated. She didn't know why. For a brief second, she looked at the driver. Their eyes met through the mirror. He looked away almost immediately. That was fine. She stepped off the bus and blended into the flow of people heading inside. Emily worked in records administration, an office job that suited her perfectly. No spotlight, no emotional conversations, just paperwork, data, quiet. She was good at it, efficient, reliable, invisible. Her coworkers liked her in a distant way. They described her as sweet, quiet, easy to work with. None of them really knew her. That was intentional. During lunch, she sat alone at her desk, scrolling through her phone without absorbing anything. At exactly 12:17 p.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach tightened. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she silenced it. The rest of the day passed slowly. By the time she left the building, the sky had darkened, heavy clouds gathering overhead. The bus ride home felt longer. She took the same seat, stared out the same window. The city looked different at night, sharper, louder, less forgiving. When she got home, Emily locked the door behind her and leaned against it for a second longer than necessary. Her chest felt tight. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years. Instead, she did what she always did. She stayed busy. She cooked, she cleaned, she organized drawers that didn't need organizing. By the time she sat down, it was late. Her phone buzzed again. Same number. This time, she answered. "Emily?" A man's voice said softly, too softly, like he was afraid she'd hang up. She closed her eyes. "Don't," she said. Her voice came out calm, but her hands were shaking. "Please don't do this." "I just wanted to hear your voice," he said. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she hung up. She didn't block the number. She went to bed with the lights off, staring into the dark. That night she dreamed of a hallway, narrow, endless, doors on both sides, all closed. She walked barefoot, each step echoing too loudly. At the very end, there was a door she knew better than her own name. She reached for it, and woke up before she touched the handle. The next morning it rained. Emily stood at the bus stop, rain soaking into her coat, heart pounding for no clear reason. The bus arrived, same route, same driver. She tapped her card and took her seat. As the bus pulled away, she felt it again, that quiet sense that something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to be dangerous. And she didn't know yet that this was the beginning, not of chaos, but of something far more unsettling. Being seen. Emily Carter didn't answer the unknown number again. She watched it ring while she stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in soapy water that had already gone cold. The phone vibrated against the counter, buzzing like something alive, something impatient. She kept her eyes on the plate she was washing, scrubbing a spot that was already clean. The ringing stopped. The silence afterward felt heavier than the sound. She turned the faucet off and stood there, dripping water onto the floor, breathing slow, controlled, like she was trying not to spook herself. This was how things started to slip. Not all at once, just a little pressure applied in the right place. Emily dried her hands, wiped the counter, then checked the lock on the door even though she knew it was already locked. She told herself she was overreacting. She told herself that a lot. The next few mornings blurred together. Same alarm, same ceiling crack, same bus. Route 17 became a rhythm she could follow without thinking. The driver, she still didn't know his name, nodded sometimes now. Not every day, just enough to acknowledge her existence without demanding anything from it. She appreciated that. On Thursday morning, the bus was more crowded than usual. Rain again. Everyone smelled like damp fabric and cheap coffee. Emily squeezed into her seat, knees angled toward the window, shoulders tight. At the third stop, a woman climbed on, arguing loudly into her phone. At the fifth, two construction workers laughed about something Emily didn't quite catch. Noise stacked on noise, filling the space. Her chest tightened. She focused on the window, on the rain sliding down the glass, bending the city into something softer and farther away. Then the bus jolted. Not hard, just enough to throw everyone forward a little. "Sorry," the driver called out. "Traffic." Emily barely noticed until she felt a hand grab the top of her seat. "Hey, you okay?" She turned. A woman stood beside her, about her age, dark blonde hair pulled back, eyes sharp but kind. She wore scrubs, slightly wrinkled, like she'd slept in them or wanted to. "I'm fine," Emily said quickly. "Yeah," she said, still looking at her. "You looked like you were going to pass out." "It wasn't." The woman smiled, not unkindly. "Okay, just checking." She moved past Emily and sat in the seat across the aisle. Emily felt embarrassed, then annoyed at herself for feeling embarrassed. She stared at the floor until her stop came. As she stood to get off, the woman spoke again. "Hey," she said, "you work at the complex too, right?" Emily hesitated. "Yes," she said. Same, I'm Rachel. Emily, Emily nodded. Nice to meet you, Emily, Rachel said. See you around. Emily stepped off the bus before the conversation could become anything else. All the way into work, Emily replayed the exchange in her head, not because it was significant, but because it wasn't. Normal. Casual. Unthreatening. And yet her body had reacted like it was something dangerous. At her desk, Emily tried to focus on files, numbers, names, dates, but her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She stared at it longer this time. Then she answered. Emily, the voice said. Same softness, same careful tone. Her throat tightened. I told you not to call. I know, he said. I'm sorry. She closed her eyes. Then stop. He paused. She could hear him breathing. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to explain. There's nothing to explain, she said. Emily, she hung up. Her hands were shaking now. She pressed them flat against her thighs under the desk, willing them to stop. Rachel's voice floated over from a few desks away. She was laughing with someone. It sounded easy, unforced. Emily envied that more than she liked. That evening, Emily didn't go straight home. She got off the bus 2 stops early and walked the rest of the way, rain soaking through her shoes. She didn't care. The cold grounded her. Her phone buzzed while she stood waiting at a crosswalk. This time it wasn't the unknown number. Mom. Emily answered. Hi, she said. You sound tired. I am. A pause. You're working too much again? No, Emily said. Just stuff. Her mother sighed softly. He called me. Emily stopped walking. When? Emily asked. Yesterday, her mother said. He asked about you. Emily stared at the red light. Cars rushed past. Water sprang up from the road. What did you tell him? She asked. The truth, she said. That you're fine, that you're busy, that you need space. Emily swallowed. Did he believe you? Another pause, longer this time. I don't know, her mother admitted. He sounds different. Emily closed her eyes. Emily, her mother carefully said, you can't avoid this forever. Yes, I can, Emily said. Silence. I love you, her mother said. I know, Emily replied. I love you too. She ended the call before either of them could say anything else. That night she dreamed again. This time the hallway wasn't empty. There was someone standing at the far end, back turned, shoulders familiar in a way that made her chest ache. She called out, but no sound came. She tried to move, but her feet wouldn't lift. She woke up gasping, heart racing, sheets twisted around her legs. It took a long time to fall back asleep. Friday morning, Rachel sat next to her on the bus without asking. Emily tensed. You don't mind, right? Rachel said, already settling in. It's fine, Emily said. Rachel glanced at her. You always say that. Say what? It's fine, Rachel said. You say it like it's armor. Emily didn't respond. They rode in silence for a few minutes. Not awkward, just there. You ever think about quitting? Rachel asked suddenly. Quitting what? Everything, Rachel said with a half smile. Job, city, life, just disappearing somewhere no one knows your name. Emily's chest tightened. No, she said too quickly. Rachel raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. Fair enough. When Emily got off the bus at her stop, Rachel called after her. See you Monday. Emily nodded without turning around. She didn't know why that unsettled her. The voicemail she had deleted earlier in the week kept creeping back into her thoughts. On Sunday night, after pacing her apartment for almost an hour, Emily finally opened her phone and retrieved it. She sat on the edge of the bed, bracing herself. Emily, the voice said, softer than she remembered, I know you don't want to hear from me. I need you to know I never meant to hurt you. I didn't understand what I was doing. I do now. Please, just let me explain. The message ended. Emily stared at the screen until it went dark. She didn't cry. She felt something worse. A crack. Monday morning, she overslept. Only by 6 minutes, but it was enough to throw everything off. She rushed through her routine, skipped breakfast, barely made the bus. She took her seat, heart still racing. Rachel wasn't there. Emily told herself she didn't care. But when Rachel got on 3 stops later, soaking wet and annoyed, relief washed over her so suddenly it scared her. "Rough morning?" Rachel asked. "You have no idea," Emily said before she could stop herself. Rachel smiled. "Welcome to the club." Something loosened between them then, just a little. They talked, not deeply, not safely, but enough. About work frustrations, about bad supervisors, about patients who yelled at the wrong people. Normal conversation, safe topics. Emily caught herself laughing once. The sound surprised her. When she got off the bus, she hesitated. "Hey," Rachel said, "you want to grab coffee sometime after work?" Emily opened her mouth to say no. "Yes," she said instead. Rachel's smile widened. "Cool, text me." Emily nodded, already wondering why she'd agreed. As the bus pulled away behind her, she stood there, heart pounding, knowing something important had just shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Enough to crack the silence she'd built her life around. And she wasn't sure she could hold it together any longer. Emily Carter almost canceled. She stood in her bathroom after work, staring at her reflection like it belonged to someone else. Her hair was still tied back the way it always was, a few loose strands framing her face in a way that felt accidental, unplanned. She considered taking it down, considered putting on makeup, considered changing clothes. Then she stopped. This wasn't who she was, or who she let herself be. She washed her hands instead, slowly, carefully, like if she focused hard enough on the motion, the rest of her thoughts would quiet. They didn't. Rachel had texted the cafe address earlier, just an address, no pressure, no smiley face. That somehow made it worse. Emily checked the lock on her door, grabbed her jacket, and left before she could change her mind. The cafe was warm and loud in a way that made Emily's shoulders tense the moment she stepped inside. Voices overlapped, cups clinked, a machine hissed steam like it was alive. Rachel waved from a corner table. Emily hesitated, then walked over. "You came," Rachel said, smiling like she hadn't been holding her breath, too. "Yeah," Emily said. "I said I would." "Fair point," Rachel said. "Sit." Emily sat. They ordered coffee, black for Emily, something complicated for Rachel that came with foam and a drizzle she didn't recognize. For a few minutes, they talked about nothing. Work frustrations, bad supervisors, patients who yelled at the wrong people. Normal conversation, safe topics. Then Rachel leaned back in her chair and studied Emily in a way that made her uncomfortable. Not judged, just seen. "You don't do this a lot, do you?" Rachel asked. "Do what?" "Let people in," Rachel said. Emily took a sip of her coffee. It tasted burnt, familiar. "No," she said. "Not really." Emily Carter woke up before the alarm. That almost never happened. For a few seconds, she lay there confused, staring at the ceiling crack like it had moved overnight. Her body felt heavy, like she'd run a long distance without actually going anywhere. Her eyes burned, not from lack of sleep, but from the crying she'd done the night before. She remembered that now. The crying. The kind that didn't ask permission. She exhaled slowly and sat up. The apartment was quiet in that deep, early morning way that made everything feel exposed. Normally, she liked this hour. Normally, it felt controlled. Today, it didn't. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, then stopped. She already knew what would be there. One unread message. She didn't look yet. Instead, she stood, wrapped herself in a sweater, and went to the kitchen. The floor was cold. She welcomed it. It reminded her she was still in her body. She made coffee and actually waited for it to finish instead of pacing. When it was done, she poured a cup and sat at the table, both hands wrapped around the mug like it was something she could anchor herself to. Her thoughts didn't come all at once. They came in pieces. Fragments. Moments she'd spent years stepping around instead of through. She thought about the version of herself who used to speak up faster, who used to laugh louder, who believed that explaining herself would eventually lead to being understood. That version of her had learned differently. Emily didn't know exactly when the shift happened. Trauma was like that. It didn't announce itself. It seeped in quietly, rewiring habits, teaching caution where there used to be trust. She took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. She didn't add sugar. She stood up, went back to the bedroom, and finally picked up her phone. Rachel had sent another message late last night. "I'm here if you want to talk, no pressure." Emily stared at that. No pressure. That phrase sat strangely in her chest. She typed, erased, typed again. "I don't really know how to be around people when I'm like this." The response came a few minutes later. "You don't have to perform, just show up as you are." Emily swallowed. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she showered. She dressed. She did her routine, but slower, less precise. She let her hair down. She didn't rush to tie it back when it brushed her face. It felt unfamiliar. At 8:02 a.m., she left the apartment. She hadn't called in sick again. That felt like avoidance. She wasn't ready to go back to normal, but she was ready to move forward, even if it was clumsy. The bus stop was quieter than usual. No rain today, just cold air and pale sunlight. When the bus pulled up, Emily felt the same small tension she always did. She stepped on, tapped her card, and moved towards her seat. Rachel wasn't there. Disappointment flickered through her before she could stop it. She sat by the window and stared out, hands folded tightly in her lap. 2 stops later, Rachel got on. Her hair was damp, like she'd rushed. She scanned the bus, spotted Emily, and smiled. Small, careful, like she wasn't sure what kind of reaction she'd get. Emily surprised herself. She smiled back. Rachel slid into the seat beside her without a word. They rode in silence for a bit. Not the heavy kind. The kind that left room. "I almost didn't come in today," Rachel said quietly. Emily glanced at her. "Why?" Rachel shrugged. "Bad night. Old stuff." Emily nodded. She understood that better than she wanted to. "I blocked his number," Emily said suddenly. Rachel turned to her now, fully. "How does that feel?" Emily thought about it. "Like slamming a door and realizing my hand still hurts." Rachel nodded slowly. "Yeah, that tracks." Emily let out a breath that was almost a laugh. The bus stopped at the medical complex. They stood together this time, moving towards the door side by side. As they stepped off, Rachel said, "You want to walk in together?" Emily hesitated. Then, "Okay." It was a small thing. It felt big, anyway. Work was still work. Files didn't care how broken you felt. Emails still arrived. Systems still crashed at the worst possible times. But Emily noticed something different. She wasn't dissociating as much. She felt present. Uncomfortable, raw, but present. At lunch, Rachel sat with her. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. At one point, Emily caught herself leaning slightly towards her, like her body trusted something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. That realization scared her. She didn't pull away. That evening, Emily called her mother. She hadn't planned to. She stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, heart pounding like she was about to confess to something. "Hi, honey," her mother said. "Hi," Emily replied. A pause. "I blocked his number." Her mother exhaled slowly. "I'm proud of you." Emily blinked. "You are?" "Yes," her mother said gently. "Not because it's easy, because it isn't." Emily swallowed. "I'm tired of carrying it." "I know," her mother said. "You always have been." Something softened then. Not healed, softened. They talked a little longer than usual, about nothing important, about groceries and weather and a neighbor's dog. When they hung up, Emily felt lighter in a way she didn't fully trust yet. Friday night, Rachel texted, "I'm ordering takeout and watching something terrible. You're welcome to join." Emily stared at the message. This was the part where she usually made an excuse. She didn't. "Okay," she typed. Rachel's apartment was warmer than hers, softer lighting, plants on the windowsill that somehow stayed alive. They ate on the couch, knees almost touching. The show was bad. They laughed anyway. At one point, Rachel glanced at Emily and said, "You know, you don't disappear when things get hard, you just go quiet." Emily considered that. "I thought that was the same thing." "It's not," Rachel said. "Quiet still means you're here." That sat with Emily long after the credits rolled. When she got home later that night, she stood in her apartment and noticed something strange. The silence wasn't pressing in. It was calm. Not empty, not waiting. Just there. She went to bed without the TV on. She slept. No hallway, no doors, just darkness and rest. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt something unfamiliar forming beneath the exhaustion. Not happiness, not relief. Strength. Quiet. Uneven. Real. And it wasn't loud enough to scare her away. Emily Carter didn't notice the change at first. That was the thing about change when it was real. It didn't arrive with music or clarity. It didn't announce itself. It moved in quietly, rearranging small habits, nudging reactions half an inch to the left. The first sign came on a Tuesday afternoon. She was standing at the copy machine at work, waiting for it to unjam for the third time that day. Normally, she would have stood there silently, jaw tight, eyes down, letting the irritation burn inward where no one could see it. This time, she sighed. Out loud. The sound surprised her. Rachel glanced up from her desk. "That thing hates everyone equally," she said. Emily almost smiled. Almost. But what mattered more was that the tension didn't spiral the way it used to. It came, it existed, and then it passed. That was new. That evening, Emily took a different bus home. Not intentionally at first. She missed Route 17 by less than a minute, watched it pull away from the curb and felt that familiar spike of panic, the disruption, the unexpected shift. Her chest tightened. She could have waited. She didn't. She stepped onto Route 22 instead. The seats were different, the lighting harsher. The driver talked to passengers like he'd known them for years. Emily chose a seat near the back, pulse racing like she'd just done something reckless. Nothing happened. The bus followed unfamiliar streets, different buildings, different faces. Emily watched it all, hands folded tight in her lap, waiting for the discomfort to overwhelm her. It didn't. It stayed manageable. When she got off 2 blocks from her apartment, she stood there for a moment, the city humming around her, and realized something unsettling. She had survived the detour. Later that night, Emily found herself standing in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not judging, observing. The woman staring back looked tired, but not hollow. There was color in her face she didn't remember seeing before. Her eyes still carried caution, but there was something else underneath it now. Curiosity. She touched the scar near her collarbone, faint and thin, a memory she didn't often allow herself to revisit. She traced it once, then dropped her hand. She didn't spiral. That mattered. Emily Carter learned something quietly devastating the longer she stayed present in her own life. Healing didn't feel like relief. It felt like responsibility. There were no fireworks, no moment where the past released its grip all at once. What came instead was weight. Subtle, steady, unavoidable. The weight of choosing differently. The weight of staying when leaving would have been easier. The weight of knowing that awareness didn't undo damage, it just made it impossible to pretend it wasn't there. That truth followed her into the weeks that came after. Not loudly, just close. The first real consequence arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, wrapped in something that looked ordinary. Emily was in the middle of reconciling records when her supervisor Karen appeared at the edge of her cubicle. Karen was efficient, polite, and distant in a way that made everyone slightly uneasy. She smiled when she needed to. She rarely wasted words. Emily, she said. "Do you have a minute?" Emily's stomach tightened. "Of course," she replied, standing. Karen gestured toward her office. Inside, the blinds were half closed. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the space between them. Karen sat. Emily remained standing until Karen nodded for her to sit as well. "You've been more engaged," Karen said. "More vocal. You've questioned procedures, suggested alternatives." Emily nodded slowly. "Yes." "That's not a bad thing," Karen said, "but it is a shift, and shifts create ripples." Emily absorbed that. "I understand." Karen leaned back. "There's a new position opening up next quarter, team lead. It requires visibility, accountability, decision-making." Emily felt her pulse spike. "I didn't ask for that," Emily said immediately. Karen nodded. "I know." Silence stretched. "This role wouldn't allow you to disappear," Karen added. "I want you to think about whether that's something you're willing to give up." Emily left the office with her heart racing. She hadn't asked for change, but it had noticed her anyway. That evening, she walked home instead of taking the bus, not because she needed the exercise, because she needed the time. The city felt louder than usual. Cars rushed past, people talked too close. Someone laughed sharply behind her, and her shoulders tensed on instinct. She forced herself to keep walking. Her phone buzzed. Rachel. "You okay?" Emily stared at the message. "Not sure," she typed. "Can I come over?" "Always," Rachel replied. Rachel listened without interrupting as Emily explained the conversation with Karen. She didn't minimize it. She didn't celebrate it either. "That's big," Rachel said finally. Emily nodded. "It feels like a trap." Rachel tilted her head. "Or an invitation?" Emily let out a humorless laugh. "Those have looked the same to me before." Rachel didn't argue. "That position would change things," Rachel said, "not just at work." "I know," Emily replied. "And you don't have to say yes," Rachel added quickly. "You're allowed to stay where you are." Emily stared at the floor. "That's the problem," she said quietly. "I don't know if I want to anymore." The words scared her. Rachel reached for her hand, not tightly, just enough to remind her she wasn't alone. "You don't have to decide tonight," Rachel said. Emily nodded, but some part of her already knew. The second consequence arrived in a way she didn't expect. It came in the form of a letter. Handwritten. Emily recognized the handwriting immediately. Her brother's. She hadn't heard from him in almost 2 years, not since the last conversation that had ended with raised voices and slammed doors, and words that stayed lodged in her chest long after. Emily sat at the kitchen table, envelope unopened, hands trembling. This wasn't a call she could hang up on. She opened it slowly. "Em, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should. I just know I owe you something I never gave you." Her throat tightened. "I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing because I finally understand that silence isn't neutral. It takes sides." Emily closed her eyes. "I took the easy way out by pretending time would fix what I broke. It didn't. I did it. I did damage, and I let you carry it alone." Tears blurred the words. "You don't have to respond. I won't show up. I won't call. This is me stepping into the mess I made, even if it's too late. I hope you're okay. Liam." Emily folded the letter carefully and pressed it flat against the table. Her chest hurt, not sharply, deeply. She didn't respond, not that day, but she didn't throw it away either. The next few weeks tested her in ways that didn't feel dramatic, but were exhausting all the same. Karen followed up about the position. Rachel grew quieter, distracted by something she wasn't ready to talk about. Her father called once and left a voicemail that said nothing important, but meant more than it should have. And Emily noticed something else. She was tired. Not the bone-deep exhaustion she'd lived with for years, a different kind. the kind that came from effort, from staying awake in moments she used to shut down. One night she snapped at Rachel over something small, dishes left in the sink and tone sharper than she meant. Rachel went quiet. "I'm sorry," Emily said immediately. Rachel nodded. But something had shifted. The air felt heavier. Emily went home that night with the familiar fear creeping back. People leave. People get tired. People change their minds. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon. Rachel asked her to sit down. "I got offered a position," Rachel said, "in another city." Emily felt the words before she processed them. "When?" she asked. "In 3 months," Rachel said. "I haven't accepted yet." Emily nodded slowly. "Okay. And I wanted you to hear it from me, not later, not accidentally." Emily swallowed. And, asked she. "And I don't know what I'm going to do," Rachel admitted. "I don't want to run away from something good here, but I also don't want to stay out of fear." The irony was not lost on either of them. Emily sat with it. The old version of her would have minimized, encouraged distance, made herself smaller to avoid pain. She didn't do that. "I don't want you to stay for me," Emily said. Rachel looked at her carefully. "And if I want to?" Emily hesitated. "Then I want it to be because you choose it, not because you're afraid of leaving." Rachel smiled softly. "You've changed." Emily nodded. "I know." That night they didn't make promises. They didn't define anything. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, knees touching, watching a show neither of them followed. It felt fragile. Real. The decision about the promotion came 2 weeks later. Emily said yes. Not confidently, not easily, but honestly. The consequences followed immediately. More meetings, more eyes, more expectations. The first time she led a discussion, her voice shook. She didn't apologize for it. She finished anyway. People didn't suddenly understand her better. Some resented the change, some welcomed it. That was part of the weight. At night she dreamed less. When she did, the hallway appeared one last time. This time she walked through it calmly. She opened one door, then another. She didn't rush. Emily finally wrote back to Liam a month later. Just 3 sentences. "I read your letter. I'm not ready to talk, but I'm not carrying this alone anymore." She mailed it without rereading it. That was enough. Rachel accepted the job. Emily helped her pack. They didn't make vows. They didn't promise long-distance miracles. They stood in the doorway on Rachel's last night, arms wrapped around each other, breathing in what had been. "This mattered," Rachel said. "Yes," Emily replied. And that was the truth. On the morning Rachel left, Emily took Route 22 to work. She sat by the window and watched the city move past her. Different route, same city. She thought about how much she'd lost, how much she'd gained, how neither canceled the other out. That afternoon she stood in Karen's office again, outlining a plan, speaking clearly, steadily. That evening she called her mother and listened instead of fixing. That night she sat alone in her apartment, the silence present but no longer oppressive. Emily Carter didn't end up fearless. She didn't end up healed in the way stories like to promise. She ended up honest. And that was harder, and braver, and real. She turned off the light and lay down, breathing evenly, grounded in her body, in her choices, in the quiet strength she'd built piece by piece. Not because everything worked out, but because she stayed. If this story resonated with you, if you saw a piece of yourself in Emily's quiet fight to stay present, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And when you're ready, watch the previous story on the channel as well. These stories are meant to be felt, not rushed.